Introduction to Sufism, the spiritual heart of Islam. Sufism, known as Tasawwuf in Arabic, represents the inner mystical dimension of Islam, focusing on the pursuit of divine love and knowledge through direct personal experience of God. Emerging in the early centuries of Islam, Sufism developed as both a reaction against worldly materialism and a fulfillment of the Quranic imperative for spiritual purification, tazkiyah. While Sufism is often described as Islamic mysticism, practitioners understand it as the heart of Islamic practice, emphasizing the interiorization of faith beyond mere external observance. 610. Sufis belong to diverse spiritual orders, Tariqas, that trace their lineage back to Prophet Muhammad through chains of masters and disciples, maintaining structured paths for spiritual development, while preserving the essential unity of Islamic belief. The historical development of Sufism reveals its deep integration with Islamic tradition. Early Muslim ascetics and mystics, dissatisfied with the worldliness that accompanied the rapid expansion of the Islamic empire, turned inward toward contemplative practices and self-purification. Figures like Hassan al-Basri, 642 to 728 CE, emphasized piety and rejection of worldly attachments, while later mystics such as Junayd of Baghdad, 830 to 910 CE, developed sophisticated theological frameworks for understanding the soul's journey to God. By the 12th century, Sufism had become institutionalized through various orders, including the Qadiriyya, Chishtiya, and Naqshbandiyya, each with distinctive practices but shared spiritual goals. Who are the Sufis? Identity and spiritual objectives, definitions and etymology. The term Sufi derives from the Arabic word suf, meaning wool, referencing the simple woolen garments worn by early Muslim ascetics as a symbol of their renunciation of worldly pleasures and material comforts. Alternative etymologies propose connections to the Arabic safa, purity, or the Greek sophos, wisdom, though most scholars consider the wool derivation most plausible. Sufis are also known as fakir, meaning poor in Arabic, or dervish, meaning seeker in Persian, terms that highlight their commitment to spiritual poverty and constant seeking of divine truth. Historical origins and development. Early asceticism. Sufism emerged in the 7th to 8th centuries CE as a reaction against the materialism perceived in the early Umayyad Caliphate. Early figures, like Hassan al-Basri, emphasized asceticism, constant self-examination, and fear of God's judgment. Development of mystical theology. By the 9th, 10th centuries, Sufism evolved beyond asceticism to incorporate sophisticated mystical theology. Figures like al-Junayd of Baghdad systematized concepts of divine love and mystical union. Institutionalization. Between the 11th, 13th centuries, Sufism became organized into orders, Tariqas, with structured teaching methods. Prominent orders included the Qadiriyya, founded by Abdul Qadir Gilani, 1077 to 1166, and the Chishtiya, established in South Asia by Moinuddin Chishti, 1141 to 1236. Spiritual goals of Sufism. Sufis pursue multiple interconnected spiritual objectives, Fana and Baqa. The process of annihilation, Fana, of the ego, followed by subsistence, Baqa, in God, represents the ultimate goal. This transformative experience involves erasing selfish desires and achieving constant awareness of divine presence. Ihsan, defined as excellence in worship, Sufis strive to worship God as if they see him, even in his invisibility, cultivating constant mindfulness, Muraqaba, of the divine. Ultimate reality. Sufis seek to experience God not as abstract concept, but as living reality, expressed through the concept of haqiqa, ultimate truth, which complements sharia, external law. 3 core practices and activities of Sufism. 3.1. Dhikr, remembrance of God. Dhikr involves the repetitive invocation of God's names or sacred phrases, such as La ilaha illallah, there is no God but God. This practice aims to purify the heart and achieve constant God consciousness. Dhikr can be performed silently or aloud, individually or collectively, often accompanied by rhythmic breathing or movement to induce spiritual states. The Quran affirms, "Verily, in the remembrance of God do hearts find tranquility." 13:28. 3.2. Sama, spiritual music and poetry. Sama refers to spiritual listening ceremonies, where music and poetry serve as vehicles for spiritual ascent. The legendary whirling dervishes of the Mevlevi order use spinning as a form of moving meditation, representing planetary orbits around the sun. Qawwali, a vibrant musical tradition from South Asia, combines hypnotic rhythms with mystical poetry to induce ecstatic states. 49. These practices are defended by 3.4. Pilgrimage to shrines, ziyarat. Sufis visit tombs of saints, awliya, seeking blessings, barakah, and spiritual inspiration. Major shrines like those of Moinuddin Chishti in Ajmer, India, and Nizamuddin Awliya in Delhi attract millions annually from diverse religious backgrounds. These sites function as centers for communal gatherings, festivals, births, and spiritual renewal. 3.5. Service and charity, khidma. Sufi orders emphasize service to humanity as worship. The Chishti order famously advocated, "Service to humanity is service to God." Many orders operate soup kitchens, schools, hospitals, and other social services, viewing practical compassion as essential to spiritual development. 4. Sufism within Islamic tradition. 4.1. Alignment with Islamic principles. Sufis firmly identify as Muslims and adhere to Islam's core tenets. They observe the 5 pillars of Islam: declaration of faith, prayer, charity, fasting, pilgrimage. They reverence the Quran as divine revelation and Muhammad as the perfect human example. They follow Islamic law, Sharia, while emphasizing its inner dimensions. 110. Sufism represents what scholars call the internalization of Islam, moving beyond mere legal compliance to embody the spirit behind Islamic teachings. 4.2. Controversies and criticisms. Despite its integral Islamic character, Sufism faces criticism from some Muslim groups. Saint veneration. Salafi and Wahhabi groups oppose visiting saints' tombs, considering it shirk, idolatry, violating God's oneness, tawhid. Innovation concerns. Critics argue practices like structured dhikr ceremonies and mystical poetry constitute bid'ah, unwarranted innovations, absent from early Islam. 10. Rejection of extremism. Some modern Islamist movements view Sufism's tolerance and flexibility as threats to their ideological agendas. 4.3. Sufi responses to criticism. Sufis defend their practices as rooted in Quranic principles and Muhammad's example, complementary rather than contradictory to Islamic law, focused on purifying intentions, niyyah, and cultivating spiritual excellence, ishan. Historically endorsed by respected scholars, including Al-Ghazali, who reconciled Sufism with Orthodox Islam. 5 Quranic foundations of Sufism. Although the Quran doesn't explicitly mention Sufism, Sufis derive their principles from numerous verses emphasizing introspection, divine love, and remembrance of God. 5.1 Verses on divine love and proximity. He loves them, and they love him. Quran 5:54. This verse underscores the reciprocal love between God and believers that Sufis seek to actualize. And I am closer to you than your jugular vein. 50:16. Sufis interpret this as affirming God's immanence and the possibility of intimate connection with the divine. 5.2 Verses on remembrance. Dhikr. Verily in the remembrance of God do hearts find tranquility. 13:28. This verse validates the central Sufi practice of dhikr as a means to spiritual peace. Remember God with much remembrance. 33:41. This command emphasizes the importance of constant remembrance beyond formal worship. 5.3 Verses on spiritual purification. Successful indeed is the one who purifies their soul. 91:9. Sufis view this as a call to inner purification, tazkiyah, through spiritual exercises. God will change the condition of people who change what is in themselves. 13:11. This verse supports the Sufi emphasis on inner transformation. 6 philosophical concepts in Sufism. 6.1. Wadat al-Wujud, unity of being, associated with Ibn Arabi, 1165 to 1240. This doctrine posits that only God truly exists. All creation is a manifestation of his attributes. This is often misunderstood as pantheism, but is more accurately described as panentheism. God is in everything, but simultaneously transcends creation. 6.2. Al-Insan al-Kamil, the perfect human. This concept describes the ideal human who perfectly reflects God's attributes in the world. Prophet Muhammad is considered the prime example. Sufis believe spiritual masters, qutbs, exist in every age, maintaining cosmic balance. 6.3. Greater Jihad, al-Jihad al-Akbar. Sufis emphasize the greater jihad, the internal struggle against one's ego, nafs, and lower desires, over external military jihad. This spiritual struggle involves constant self-examination and discipline. 7. Historical and cultural impact of Sufism. 7.1. Spread of Islam. Sufis played a crucial role in Islam's expansion through peaceful missionary work across Central Asia, Africa, and South Asia. Their adaptable approach incorporated local customs while maintaining Islamic essentials, making conversion more accessible. South Asia. Figures like Khwaja Moinuddin Chishti, 1141 to 1236, established inclusive traditions attracting millions of converts. Southeast Asia. The Wali Songo, 9 saints, gracefully introduced Islam to Indonesia by harmonizing it with existing Hindu-Buddhist traditions. Africa. Orders like Tijaniya and Qadiriya spread Islam across West Africa through trade networks and spiritual example. 7.2. Cultural contributions. Sufism profoundly influenced Islamic culture through poetry. Mystical poets like Rumi, Persian, Ibn al-Farid, Arabic, and Bulleh Shah, Punjabi, composed timeless works exploring divine love. Music. Traditions like Qawwali, South Asia, and Gnawa, North Africa, blend devotional poetry with hypnotic architecture. Sufi shrines like Istanbul's Mevlevi Lodge and Delhi's Nizamuddin Dargah represent architectural marvels. 7.3. Interfaith harmony. Sufism's emphasis on common spiritual humanity has facilitated interfaith dialogue. Sufi shrines traditionally welcome people of all faiths, creating spaces for shared spiritual experience beyond doctrinal differences. 8. Sufism in the modern world. 8.1. Contemporary relevance. Sufism remains vibrantly relevant in the 21st century, countering extremism. Many governments and international organizations promote Sufism as an alternative to violent extremism due to its emphasis on peace and tolerance. Global appeal. Rumi regularly ranks among America's best-selling poets. Sufi practices like meditation and whirling attract spiritual seekers beyond Muslim communities.